Have you ever heard a musical artist described as having great chops? What does that mean? Well, the term chops is slang in the music business that refers to an artist that has developed great skills over time, whether they are a musician, composer, producer, or other titles associated with the music business. This is Scott Grimaldi, your host of Got Chops. Join me as I interview one musical artist per episode that I've had the pleasure of either performing, recording, or work with in my career. Plus, I'll be interviewing artists I've always wanted to speak with. We'll discover how each artist developed their chops, listen to their stories, and much more. This is Got Chops. My special guest artist for today is one of the most respected trumpet players around. After graduating from the Eastman School of Music, where he studied with recording artist Chuck Mangione, he toured as the lead trumpet player with the jazz ambassadors of the U.S. Army Field Band in Washington, D.C. 3 years later, he became a member of the legendary Maynard Ferguson Orchestra for 5 years and can be heard on 4 of Maynard's albums. By the way, that's him playing the trumpet solo on the track behind me when he was featured in Maynard's band. He is a first-rate musician, a veteran of dozens of Broadway shows, a member of the Tony Awards Orchestra for over a decade, 25 years as a member of the Thad Jones Mel Lewis Orchestra, and has played behind iconic artists ranging from Frank Sinatra to Aretha Franklin, and not to mention countless other musical artists. Over the years, I've had the good fortune of playing in different horn sections with this trumpet player for various stage shows, pit orchestras, recording sessions, and other types of gigs that we were both contracted to play on. Without a doubt, this trumpet player certainly got chops. Please welcome my friend, Joe Mosello. Hi, Joe. How are you?
Hey, I'm fine. How you doing, Scott?
I'm good. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview with me. I really appreciate it. To tell the audience, you and I have been friends and colleagues for many, many years on various different bandstands, different genres of music. And it's just a pleasure for me now to introduce you to people in the audience that are listening who might not know who you are, but interested in finding out who you are. I'm sure your friends, your family, your students certainly know who you are, and they're going to hear these things that they are familiar with when you tell them.
Well, I'm flattered to be asked by you to do this, first of all.
My pleasure. So, let me ask you, what does the music slang "got chops" mean to you?
Well, I think it's just the person's ability to get the job done, like whatever's put in front of you, whatever type of music is put in front of you, that you'll get the job done as far as all the aspects, playing it correctly and quickly. And being able to really have a lot of hats. In other words, be able to play any style very well. So he's got chops. In other words, he can really, anything you put in front of him, he's gonna be able to play it.
Absolutely. And I know Joe Mosello very well. And any music I've ever seen any conductor, contractor, arranger, composer put in front of him nails it the first time. So one of the things that he mentioned is you have to wear different hats. So besides playing different types of music and styles and key signatures and time signatures, you have to have down pat how to sight read. So he's got that skill down.
That's so important. Time is money. So, whoever hires you wants you to be able to play what's put in front of you, as quickly as possible. So you have to really have the reading together. you have to be able to almost the first time you play it, be able to play it down perfectly.
Absolutely. And I tell my students that when I broke into the music business, especially the recording industry, you signed the union papers. It was a 3 hour call or whatever it was. You had the certain instruments you had to play. They would put the music in front of you. They might play the track, they might not. They would explain the style. And then the first take, that's what they're going for because they have to get you in and out. And you and I have both had that experience. Whereas today, if you're called for a recording session, it's someone's home studio or a studio where they're renting space, but it's more lax. It's more like, okay, well, let's try another take. Let's try another take because they
Yeah.
have all the time in the world because it's their project, but not back then.
Yeah, true. That is true. Being the home studio thing is a little more relaxed, but it was very stressful in the studios, like in New York, and you had to you were really under the gun, and you had to perform accurately and the way they wanted almost immediately.
Absolutely. So, do you have any philosophies or catchphrases that you use?
Well, I mean, of course, I always do your best. That's and be early. Always be early when you're asked to do something at a certain place. The last thing a person wants when they hire you is to be worrying, looking at their watch and saying, "Where is he?" So you, so I'm a nut with being early. I'll be an hour early for a job. I'd rather sit there and have the person that hired me have the peace of mind that I'm there than worrying where I am. So it's so always do your best, be early, and I think there's more to a job than just playing well. I mean, it's getting along with everybody. Like they're not going to hire somebody again for a job if the guy or girl doesn't have any personality and really, is fun to be with. So there's a lot more than just the playing. Um, I so get along with everybody and that would be the three things. Do your best, be early, and get along with everybody.
I agree. And anyone that we've worked for, that's exactly what they were looking for. And there are times where they would hire, a hotshot jazz player, great chops, but never played the idiom that, or the genre that was in front of us and didn't really fit in. And they were never there again.
That's a good word for it, fitting in. Um, and there's a lot of friends of mine that they'll say, "God, gosh, we have to hire so and so. He's just is so much fun to be with and
Hmm.
makes the hang so much better." Um, and these are the people that get hired more often.
Like myself, you're a gun for hire. We study classical, we study jazz, we can play those idioms, pop, rock, and all that stuff. But we were brought up in an age where you learn your craft, you learn your instruments, you go to a gig, you sight read, you leave, you go to the next one. It's not like, okay, a jazz club, yes, you have your tunes, you have to prepare them. But here it's different. We have a different mindset. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like actors, they'll get stereotyped in a certain role, um, and I get a majority of my work, in like a big band type of idiom, where I'm playing lead, but I long for like a classically oriented job, where I have to do a something like that. I don't want to be. I don't want to be just like the bad guy roles. You know, I want to have a little diversity in the types of things I play. But so I long for the classical jobs and the things like that.
So, what got you interested in playing the trumpet?
I was in second grade, and my uncle, who was the person that started teaching me, he brought his son over to my parents' house and to play, and so here I am, uh, hearing my cousin play the trumpet, and I was just like, my mouth was my mouth opened wide and my eyes, and I just said, "Oh my gosh, that's I want to do that." It was, I mean, I'd always uh, been musically inclined, as a growing up with toy instruments and else, and my father was a musician too. But this time when I heard him play, that was it. So my uncle said, "Well, listen, if you want to play, I'll come and start you like I did my son." So my uncle was the first teacher I had, and that was it. I started in second grade. I mean, most kids now. I do demos in the schools. To show the kids the instruments. What do they usually start? Like at third or fourth grade?
Fourth grade, mostly.
Yeah. So I was a little young to start, but I started taking lessons in second grade. And then my high school band, there wasn't in my hometown. It wasn't like an elementary band, a middle school band, and a high school band. The high school band was grades, third to 12, 3 to 12, third grade to 12th grade. So when we'd march down a street in a parade, you'd have like tall people, and you'd have little musicians that were three or 4 feet tall, and people would be like, like smiling and couldn't get over the different ages. So I
Wow.
played. I played. I joined the high school band, I think, in fourth grade, and so I think, and we had a great band. I always say if I'd grown up in the town like right next to mine, I wouldn't be in music today. It's funny how things work like that. We had a great band director and great music program, but the band was like all ages from grade school up to high school. And as I got better at playing, and he featured me a lot, uh, when we do in our marching band shows. He would. I was always like the soloist, and so I knew pretty much in high school that I was going to go on and make a career out of it.
Interesting. So, where did you grow up?
Well, Mount Carmel, Pennsylvania, it's a small town I always say, in the Scranton Wilkes-Barre area, or the Allentown Bethlehem area. Um, it's about a 3 hour drive from New York City, directly west. And like I said, it was a great program there, and I was able to rise to the point where I was a featured all the time. And then I had a teacher. Well, after my uncle was teaching me, I in seventh grade I started studying with the brass, uh, the head of the brass department at Susquehanna University, and he was a trombone player. So I actually studied my from seventh grade to 12th grade with with a Curtis Institute graduate, and that's, for people who don't know, is one of the top music schools in the country. Like I always think of Juilliard and Curtis and Eastman as the three top schools. But anyway, he taught me in seventh grade. My father would take me down to the college, and I was taking lessons with him, and he he was very encouraging too, like to mentioning to take be in music as a profession. So
Wow.
I got good instruction and was in a great program, a great high school program. But so my destiny was pretty outlined pretty early.
And you had all this encouragement from home and at school and all these different grades. So at that time, how long did you practice the trumpet?
Geez, I used to remember my mom, because I practiced down in the basement. She'd go, Joey, stop already. Like come up and take a, eat something or take a rest. I practiced, I was playing a lot in high. So early on, I did practice a lot. And even into college, I practiced a lot. Nowadays, it might be a little less.
Okay, so let me ask you, back then, what were your daily music routines?
Hmm. Well, the Arbin book, which is like the Bible for trumpet players.
Yes.
That was the book I started with, and I did all the usual things that a brass player does, long tones and scales, and but I'll tell you, I'd put records on of trumpet players, and we'll get into who they are here, but I just would listen, and this is where I developed playing by ear a little bit. I would try to play what they were playing on these recordings, or play along with them. So I kind of deviated a little from the formal practice a lot of times, and just would play along with recordings.
Well, that's your combination of your classical and jazz, because people that study
Hmm.
jazz, they're so anxious to, after reading the music, go out there, start transcribing, listening to records. And so you were doing the same thing at a very early age. That's great.
Yeah, it's the feel you get. Like that's where I got the time feel and the style, and listening to these players and trying to emulate how they played, because it's not just reading the notes on the paper. It's making music out of it, and bringing it to life.
So those musical artists that you were listening to and trying to play along with, of course, they inspired you. Are they the same artists that continue to inspire you today? And could you name a few of them?
They were from the beginning to this day, and and I was lucky to work with one of them in my career. But Maynard Ferguson, he was Canadian born, and he's not with us today. He passed in 2006, I believe. But I played with on his band from 1975 to 1980, and I was blessed to be on his band and do let's see, one, two, three, four recordings with him. And he was one of the ones I played in those early days. My band director, was a fan of Maynard's, and so he said, Joey, come over here. I want you to hear this. And I was like in ninth grade or something. And again, it was another pivotal moment when I first heard Maynard on a recording. I couldn't believe it, that somebody can do this on the trumpet, because his specialty was playing in the upper register, but the sound he had, and the feeling he put into the music, and playing from his heart, and it wasn't just all high notes. He could improvise. He had the range. He had a great sound in the lower register too. But Maynard was one. Al Hurt was another trumpet player, and my parents were they'd get these recordings for me, so I have them to thank. I mean, they would get me Al Hurt recordings, and I wore them out. He was another trumpet player, and then Doc Severinsen. Those are the three trumpet players that had the most influence on me, and I'm happy to say that Doc is still alive today. He's like 93, I think. So he continues to be an inspiration, for us old guys that think we're winding down our careers. You see somebody that's 20 years older than me. I'm giving my age away here.
You're 45, right?
To still see somebody, playing that great at that level. And he was great to listen to. All three of them in high school. I just wore their records out.
Well, if I can add to a couple of things that you were just talking about, it sounds like your upbringing and who you were inspired by, it sounds like the household that I was brought up in. You and I have talked about this. My father was a trumpet player, and mostly in the house, we would just hear all trumpet music of the same artist you just mentioned. And to this day, when we go to visit my mom and dad, we're in the kitchen, we're eating, and then all of a sudden he escapes. He comes back with his iPad, and he starts playing, every, famous trumpet player that you're mentioning. Do you know this video? Do you know that video? And in the last, I think, 5-6 years since he's seen you and I perform together, and he knows who you've been with, he always pulls up the videos. Look, do you know this one with Joe playing with Maynard? This is fantastic.
It was a blessing to get to play with Maynard. That was probably the highlight of my life. To get the timeline, like I graduated from high school in '67, and I went to the Eastman School of Music for 4 years. So I graduated from the Eastman in '71, and then I went into a service band in Washington, the Jazz Ambassadors, it's called. So I got to play lead in a jazz band for the 3 years I was in the Army, and so that was '71 to '74, and then I got with Maynard in '75, and was with him for 5 years. To 1980.
Going back to your time with Maynard, so you mentioned '75. That's when I graduated high school and started Berklee College of Music. So I think it was the summer before I went to Berklee, and a bunch of friends of mine and I went to see you play somewhere in New Jersey. And, we had all the albums. And as soon as you guys came on stage, our jaws dropped because, you know how great Maynard was.
Yeah, he's something to see in person.
Every one of the trumpet players, yourself and all the other guys, I mean, just, oh my God, everyone is just a lead trumpet player. I mean, you must have had a great time playing with those guys. And do you ever see them since that time?
One of the guys is right here in New York, so I see him a lot. One of the guys lives in Florida, but we'll talk on Facebook, or we'll talk on the phone maybe, but I don't. It's hard to see them in person because we live all over the place. I mean, Maynard, he was just a great person, not only a musician, but just a great person to work for. He didn't have an ego. Like he loved featuring everybody on the band. It wasn't like I'm gonna do everything. He enjoyed listening to the guys in the band. So he just loved to feature everybody. Just phenomenal. Just a phenomenal person.
And a lot of those guys came out of that band as superstars. I think when you were with the band, you were with Peter Erskine on drums.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I came to New York from Maynard's band, and it opened up so many doors when I got to New York quicker than the normal time, where you'd have to come to New York and try to establish yourself, and sometimes it would take years. And when I got to New York, just the people knowing that he just came from Maynard Ferguson's band, it just gave you a more immediate respect. And so I got opportunities a lot quicker because of that.
Well, let me ask you, before Maynard, I know you were with the Jazz Ambassadors in Washington. I mean, that itself is just a great gig. Going from there, you went to Maynard. How did you get connected with Maynard Ferguson and him selecting you?
Wow, that's a good question. I was literally a pest. I mean, I went to hear Maynard anywhere within 100-mile radius of walk. Like I'd go to Baltimore, I'd go to high schools in Virginia, I'd go to Pennsylvania, even. I mean, and guys in the band would say, "Oh, geez, there, here he is again." It's like I just, I just, I went to hear him wherever I could, and but Maynard doesn't really hire the people for his band. Like he didn't know who the trumpet players were. He would ask his trumpet section,
Mm-hmm.
"Hey guys, we're gonna need another trumpet because because guys come and go in the band. I mean, so when somebody leaves, a trumpet player leaves, he asks the other trumpet players, who do you want to have join us?" So when I went to hear Maynard all over the place, I talked with the trumpet players, and I got to know them. And when I talked to the band, Stan Mark was playing in the band in the trumpet section, and Randy Purcell was playing trombone in the band, and these were ex-Navy band guys. So bang, right off the bat, when I said I'm in the Army in the Jazz Ambassadors,
You're in.
I had something in common. Oh wow, well I was in the Navy band, and so right away they knew that I wasn't just somebody down the street. And then I made a tape, a cassette tape. I don't know if people even know what that is today, but I put a cassette tape together of things I played in college and things I played in the jazz band in the Army, some lead things, some solo things, and I sent it to Stan Mark. And now the next time I went to hear Maynard live, it wasn't like, "Oh God, there he is again." It was like, "Joe, hey, how are you?" It was like, wow, that tape was amazing. Maynard listened to some of it, and it was great. We have this one in mind, and this one, but we'll definitely. I got up to the head of the list, top of the list, for when somebody would leave the band.
Wow.
And so here it was, all those times going to hear them, and putting this tape together by playing. But it was really Stan who I have to thank for getting me on the band. And I'll never forget, it was December 15th or 16th of 1974, and Maynard always took a Christmas break, so they were going to be off for a month, and then they were going to start up again in the middle of January of 75. And I get the phone call, and it's Joe. "Hey, Joe, it's Stan Mark. Lynn Nicholson, who was one of the trumpet players on the band, Lynn just left the band, and how would you like to come out on the band?" It was like, I couldn't believe it. I just could not believe it. Here, somebody's asking me to come out with Maynard.
Wow.
And this is somebody I listened to all through high school,
Mm-hmm.
and idolized since I could hold a horn in my hands, and I'm being asked to go out. And it wasn't like, can you come tomorrow? So I had a whole month. He said, we're going to start up in January. We'll send you a plane ticket, and we're going to start in Philadelphia, and so that was it. I had a month to let this sink in. But after he hung up, I was on the phone, like, I think for 2 days straight, like, just calling everybody, family and friends.
Oh, absolutely.
It was just great, and so that was it. I started January of '75 and stayed with them until December of '79, actually. So it was 5 years, but just the greatest.
Oh my God, it must have been, and I'm sure you miss it tremendously. What trumpet chairs did you play?
Well, I didn't really play lead. I mean, I played on a couple of tunes. We kind of switched it around. Stan was the lead player, and but Dennis Node was in the section, and Ron Tooley and myself. So Stan would hand me, here, play lead on this thing. So we had our moments here and there where we were put in the driver's seat. I basically played a lot, mostly second and third. But it's funny because after I got called to do Maynard's band in that December, like a week later, I got called to play lead trumpet with Woody Herman.
Oh, wow.
Dave Stahl, who was Woody's lead player, called me and said, "Joe, how would you like to, come out and play lead? I have to, I'm leaving. I got called to do something else. I forget what it was, but so now I had to figure out whether I want to play lead trumpet with Woody or play, in the section, like mostly second and third with Maynard. And to this day, I don't regret the decision of being with. I'd rather be with somebody I've idolized my whole life. No offense to Woody, but I turned down a lead chair. I turned down a first trumpet chair to play with the person I adored since I, was in high school.
Well, the good thing about that, staying with Maynard, is, like I said before, all of you were lead players, and that opened so many doors for you. I also remember you playing conga with Maynard.
Oh gosh, and that's another thing. He wanted to get a percussionist, somebody to play conga drums, and he didn't want to hire an extra guy. He said, like, does anybody in the band have any experience with Latin percussion? And I guess I had played a little bit with it in the Army band. I had just dabbled in it. So I said, yeah, I have a little experience doing it. So that was it. He bought a set of conga drums, and it was like I would play, and because when guys soloed on the band, they were open solos. So there were times where the trumpets were sitting back there, playing cowbell or a tambourine or something. And so I played the congas on these solo sections, and I got it was called a gooseneck microphone, so I can bring it over when we're playing trumpets, and then I turn it over onto the drums to play congas. But I picked up a lot of pointers with congas. Like when Peter Erskine came on, he showed me some things, and Ramon Lopez, who was the conga player on Stan Kenton's band, because we did a lot of concerts with both bands, and he'd come over and show me some things. So I was a quick study and learned a lot of different techniques from different people. So I really kind of enjoyed it and grew more proficient with it. And it was another way of getting. Then he started to feature me on a conga solo, and
Wow.
it was like so here I am playing a solo on percussion. And it's funny because Earl Gardner, when he's the lead trumpet player that I played with on Thad Jones and Mel Lewis's band when I got to New York, when he saw me when he first saw me, he says, I went to hear Maynard's band when you were on it, and I heard you playing percussion. He said, I thought you were a percussionist that doubled on trumpet.
Wow.
So it was like he didn't realize that the trumpet was my main instrument. I was doubling on percussion, but that was fun. That was fun to play percussion on the band. And sadly, when I got to New York, I mean, there were so many great percussionists, and I had all I can do with just trying to get established as a trumpet player. I kind of put that in the back seat, the percussion playing. I have some drums here in my living room, but my fingers have softened through the years. I don't have the calluses anymore.
And with Maynard, I understand that you played, well, I know this from watching you with Maynard, you played on some of his top hits, back then. Could you tell the audience about those hits? And then I believe you have two gold records that you were given, one with Maynard and one with Ashford and Simpson, I believe.
Yeah, yeah. I did four recordings with Maynard, Conquistador, and then New Vintage, and then Carnival, and then Hot. It was called Hot. And the first three, he used Ralph on percussion, but when we got to the Hot album, he let me do the percussion on the record, and that was like, wow, he had the the faith in me to do percussion on one of his recordings. That's that was a really great feeling, and so I am playing percussion on the Hot album.
Wow, good for you.
But we did, yeah, on Conquistador, we did the theme from Rocky, and that, it was phenomenal how that rose in the charts. I think it got up into the low 20, like 22 or 23 on the top 100. So that was great, a great break for Maynard. He really got into a higher stature, with coming out with that.
And especially if you were a brass player back in the 70s and Maynard became that popular, that inspired so many high school jazz students
Oh
because,
yeah.
right? I mean, and that's why they wanted to become a professional brass player or woodwind players or anything like that. So, going on, let's talk about the other artists, some of the other artists you've been so fortunate to play with. I believe you were with the Thad Jones Mel Lewis Orchestra for 25 years.
Yes, yes, and talk about doors opening. Like I just got to New York from Maynard. I left Maynard in December of '79, and I go to New. I mean, and people say, why did you leave? I mean, it was time. I wanted to settle down and establish myself in one place. And at that time, it was either Los Angeles or New York. So I always thought of I was an East Coast guy, so New York it was. But I just got to New York that January, and I started subbing on like Ron Tooley, who had left Maynard a year before me, uh, was playing on Thad and Mel's band. So when I got to New York and jam, I'm there like the first month I'm there. Ron called me to go sub on a Monday night for him with the Thad Jones band, and that's where I got to know Earl Gardner, who was playing lead, and we just hit it off immediately. Um, just a great person and great player, and it just clicked. getting along with each other. And this is the point we made earlier on with, you know, getting along with others. But anyway, here we go. That March, like, what is it, 3 months I'm in New York? That March, Thad and Mel, well, now Thad left the band. Thad went to Europe, and it was just called the Mel Lewis Jazz Orchestra. So, unfortunately, I never got to play with the band with both Thad and Mel there. When I came and started subbing in January of '80, Thad had left. So anyway, they were going to Europe on a tour in March, like a 4-week tour, and Ron Tooley said, "Joe, I can't do the tour. Do you want to go for me?" And it was like, Earl really likes you, and Mel likes you, and so, why can you do this tour for me? And I said, well, let me think about it. Yes.
Of course.
So here I am going on a tour with the Mel Lewis Band 3 months into being in New York.
Wow.
And then when we got back from that tour, and I still don't know to this day, but Ron said, "Listen, Joe, I have so many things going on that I really can't make the commitment to Mel's band. Do you want to just stay on the band, take my place?" So here I get on this tour, and then I'm in the band playing second trumpet with Earl, and I stayed 20. That was, the rest is history. I stayed. The Village Vanguard became my second home. We were there every Monday night, and I was with the band until 2005. So it was another blessing to get that job. And Earl and I, it's like family. And you play with somebody that long, you just think alike. I knew what he was going to do with every note, every inflection, the way he phrased. I just did it exactly the same.
We were at Radio City Music Hall, and I remember you came into the green room and you said, "Hey guys, I'm so happy tonight. I was able to contract the trumpet section from the Vanguard Orchestra, and I can't wait. It's going to be like old times." And you are beaming from ear to ear, and the camaraderie that you have with these guys and still do, it's infectious. Everyone can tell, and that creates for just a great, energetic performance.
Yeah, and that was Earl Gardner and Glenn Drews,
yeah,
who's another great friend and great trumpet player. And I think that Aretha gig was the first time the three of us played together, because we all left the Mel Lewis's band at the same time. That Aretha gig was the first time we played together since.
I remember you saying that. Yep.
And it was, the whole day was just great. The jokes and the laughing, and it was like we never stopped playing together. We knew exactly. we just locked in like it was yesterday.
So do you have any funny stories? I mean, we've been together on many. He's laughing already. He's got 28,000 stories to say. But can you share at least one, that was funny about a musician or a gig? I probably know a lot of them.
Oh gosh, that's a tough one. We were always into the Italian double talk, like when
Right.
we'd play a song, we would put Italian lyrics to it.
Right.
So that was always a big joke that we'd always be doing that.
Let me share with the audience something that you continue to do on every gig. I don't care what it was. So, when you get on stage and you're ready to play behind, one of these artists we've talked about, everyone's on high alert and the audience is anticipating a great show. The first thing that you hear from any show, a theater or Broadway show, stage show, is to alert the audience is a timpani roll. So there's a timpani roll, and here's Mosello in the back, and you hear him say, "And now." So because he's
Ladies and gentlemen, and now.
right, so he starts to do it, to let us know, well, that's what the MC is about to do. And the guys in the horn section, all the trumpets, trombones, and saxophones, we would just start laughing, and the audience is perceiving, oh, these guys are having a great time. But it would really just, calm the nerves. Okay, we're ready to play. We're going to have a great time.
I didn't really realize it at the time, but it did kind of loosen things up and get, release, lower the stress level a little bit. Everybody's like, one of my things I used to always say, all right, everybody, let's tense up.
Yep.
But I meant it in a reverse psychology. I said that to make everybody laugh and loosen up. You have to have a little humor just to keep your sanity. You can't, and everybody plays better that way.
I agree.
I mean, I still have respect for the job, and when the conductor raised his baton, I mean, it was all business and serious. But you have to have the lighter moments before and in between and after, just to release the tension a little bit.
I agree. You're 100% right.
Yep.
Joe, do you remember how we met musically?
Well, you're going to tell me, I'm sure, because I'm embarrassed to say I can't remember, but maybe when you start saying it'll come to me.
Okay. Well, I recall one of two things, and I can't get it straight in my head what came first. One of them is the school I was teaching at, where I used to recommend to my trumpet students to go study with you, and you would hear the difference at the very next concert. So I'm always grateful to you for teaching these kids the right way. Before that, it was career day at the school, and I was told from one of the people that you're friends with that, I'm having my friend's husband come by today. He's going to be talking about what it's like to have a career as a trumpet player in music. And so that was one of the times, and you brought your 2 gold albums. I'll never forget that. There was another time for a club day band that I had. My trumpet player, he couldn't make it, and he said, I'm going to send Joe Mosello.
No, I think that was earlier than the career day thing.
Okay, like I said, I couldn't get it straight in my head, but I mean, I see you walking into the hall. You came in, and it was like, oh my God, straight ahead. And your attitude was, oh man, I love this. This is cool, man. Call me anytime.
It did wonders for me because you're doing Broadway shows and you're doing the same show every night for 6 months, a year, 2 years.
Right.
I think the longest show I did was Dreamgirls. It was 3 years and 10 months. But anyway, when you and luckily you can take off. And when I'm there doing your job, it was so refreshing and stimulating to do something different. And I enjoyed it so much. And that you always have to. It's showing respect to people. Like I always thank someone for having me. Thank you for asking me. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. I had a great time. That's the kind of things you have to always say to the leaders and people that you're playing with.
And then shortly after that, besides the Aretha gigs, we were doing Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons, And that was long before, Jersey Boys came out. But, and when I was on Broadway, I never had a full show of my own. I would sub. So I sub for, a handful of woodwind players on the different chairs. And I loved that.
That's nice. Then you're doing different shows, so you don't get tired of the one.
Exactly. I enjoyed all that. So it's the same experience you had coming onto a club date. Oh, this is different. This is really cool. And you like it.
And so thank goodness that we were able to take off from these Broadway shows. I think at one point, I don't think you were, but they negotiated with the Broadway league and producers, that musicians have to keep their livelihood intact, and they have to be able to take off and do other work. So that was nice to do that. It kept the show healthier too, because you'd come back and have a little more. You wouldn't be in a rut so much. Come back from an outside job, it was like you just had a vacation or something.
I agree. And it reminds you why you got into this business, because you were a gun for hire. There's right?
Yeah.
And
yep.
we enjoy that. So what advice could you share with someone that's listening to you right now that is inspired by you and dreaming and thinking about doing the same things you're doing, like you were with Maynard?
Well, of course, you have to have a good work ethic. You have to really work hard on, with practicing your instrument. And I tell students, you don't have to sit there like 3 hours a day. I mean, kids today have so much on their plates with in school. There's so many activities and sports things and whatever. And so I just tell them to try to put the time in on your instrument. Because when you get in a position, you want to do a good job. So that's the main thing. But it's listening. It's listening to other musicians. I mean, like I told you, when I wore out the records of Al Hirt and Maynard and Doc Severinsen, and you have to listen to professional players of your instrument, whether they're in their own group or by themselves, but you want to hear what they do on the instrument. Like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize you can do that on a trumpet. I'd say. And so it's practicing, intensely and listening intensely, because that it's not just a lot of kids will practice like through the roof, but they don't know how to make music. They don't know how to. It's blending. It's a group thing. It's like a baseball team. You have to have everybody on the team has to do their job and make a great team. So you have to learn to get to blend with other players, and the listening really helps.
Spot on answer. Thank you. That's excellent. So at the top of the show, I asked you if you had any philosophies or catchphrases, and I asked this of all my guests. So I'd like to share with you a catchphrase of mine that I feel it really ties in the points together that you made through this interview about developing your chops. So it goes like this: it's not my way, it's the way it is.
Very good. Yeah, it's never you. It's the group. It's the whole group. You don't want to stick out and just play like you're the only one there.
Right, and it goes back to formal training. Your teacher or professor, whoever it was, said, play it like this. You walk away and you're, I have to do it his way. No, he's handing down a tradition. This is what you do.
Yeah, it's a heritage that you have to honor,
Right.
you know. And there's been people that came. You have to honor. You have to respect your history, and just it's like it's passed down from generation to generation. So I'm not showing. I'm not doing something that's new. I'm doing something that's been passed down from a previous time. And I mean, I'm not saying that music is just traditions. You have to be creative and do new things, but it's kind of a blend of both, I think.
I agree. Joe, do you have any music events or new projects coming up that you'd like to announce or share with the audience?
Well, we all know we're in a rough time here with the pandemic and everything. So a lot of things are kind of on hold. I mean, I was going to do a Johnny Mathis concert at NJ Pack in Newark, and that's kind of been put on hold. And we'll just have to wait and see. I wish I can tell you that there were things coming up, but due to this changing day to day thing with this pandemic, people are still a little nervous to come out and perform.
Last question. How and where can my audience reach you?
Well, I always say that the easiest way is just to email me. I check my email round the clock, and it's just Joe Mosello at AOL.com. Joe Mosello at AOL.com. And I don't just read an email and delete it. I will answer anyone that has any questions or wants advice, or I'll respect anybody that sends me an email. And of course, I'm on Facebook. I'm not on any other social media except Facebook. So but I think the email's the safest way.
Well, listen, thank you so much for giving out such great information. I've been a fan of yours long before we worked together. You're a tremendous player. And one of the things you said before, it's all about the hang. When you're hanging with Joe Mosello, you're just laughing all the time. You're just having a great time. You are. And I say that sincerely. And I always look forward to knowing that you're on the gig, because we have such a great time. So thank you, Joe.
Well, thank you for the kind words, and thank you again for having me here today. And the time does fly when you're talking about something you're passionate about, and that's another thing maybe to close with is don't ever lose the passion.
Yep.
Maynard said when he was in his 60s and 50s and 60s that he still enjoyed playing like it was the first time. So it's always enjoy it and have the passion.
I agree. Joe, have a great day. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, Scott. It was my pleasure.
Same here. Thanks, Joe.
You take care.
Bye-bye. Thanks so much for joining me on today's show. I hope you enjoyed the conversation and could hear why my guest got chops. Please spread the word to your family and friends about my podcast, and if you would like to discuss Got Chops in between episodes, you can reach me on Instagram at Got Chops Podcast and on Twitter at Grimaldi Music. I can also be reached on Facebook, Scott Grimaldi, The Color of Midnight. My website is grimaldimusic.com, and the address for this podcast is anchor.fm/gotchops. Before I conclude with today's show, I'd like to share a catchphrase of mine that you'll probably hear me say quite often, for I truly believe it sums up what every artist has in common in order to achieve their chops. And it goes like this: it's not my way, it's the way it is. Join me on the next episode when we discover why my next guest got chops.